and welcome to episode 546 of the God is a Geek podcast. My name's Adam Cook, and I'm joined this week by Lyle and Mick. Hello, lads. You all right?
Hello.
Hey, hello. We got the double introduction, but look how professional we are. We're not jumping all over each other.
There was a slight pause. There's a slight pause where everyone's deciding, shall I go? Shall I go? Listen, this week, after last week's like nearly 2-hour marathon podcast, this week we thought what we'd do, just one smooth, just 1 hour, just in and out, normal podcast, and there will be no problem with that because we're here to talk about a game that will not divide opinion and is just going to be really easy to talk about, and that's Dragon's Dogma 2. So we may as well start with that now. Mick's reviewed it. Lyle hasn't got around to playing it. I'm sure you will at some point.
I'm aiming to, hopefully, maybe. I've not started Final Fantasy 7. Like, you've got to give me a moment, guys, this year.
Could you play them simultaneously somehow? Is it possible?
Is this like a controller in each hand?
Yeah,
give it a
somehow.
go. Yes.
Why not?
Why not?
Sure, Dragon's Dogma 2 would be dead easy with one-handed.
Very.
Yeah, you reckon?
Yeah.
Some context, I suppose.
It's really easy going. Yeah.
Like, this game is a long time coming. Long time coming. I know it's got to be 10 years. It's difficult to know exactly how long without looking it up because Dark Arisen,
I think
the
12,
DLC's been
since the launch.
but they've re-released Dragon's Dogma, Dark Arisen like over and over again on Switch. It just kept coming back. It's always about £2 if you want to buy it on the stores. But Dragon's Dogma 2, as we talk, is here. It's out. You can play it. You can buy it. It's real. It's very big. It's very different. I have complicated feelings about it, so let's start with you, Mick. Let's talk about Dragon's Dogma 2.
I have complicated feelings about it too, but but less complicated than yours because I really like it. Like
I do too. So that's not. So we're on the same page so far.
It's a weird game. I mean, the first one was a weird game, wasn't it? But it was a weird game like a dozen years ago when it was, I don't know, like open worlds weren't as pervasive, were they? 12 years ago. Like nowadays, everything's got.
They certainly weren't as. Oh, I don't want to say this because it sounds really. I don't want it to sound dismissive, but they certainly weren't as cookie cutter as they have in some places become. And I'll say, no, in some areas when you start an open world game, and to be honest, well, we've started calling them checklist games, haven't we? Kind of when we chat about them because you're sort of checking things off the list. That's
kind of what you do, and I like that. I don't mind. I don't mind a big old Ubisoft world. I mean, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth hadn't. Oh well, we might as well. I mean, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth had a similar kind of system.
No, it is. It is definitely.
It works. You know, and I think it's one of those things that I think people, if you review a lot of games or you play a lot of games like we do, it's probably more noticeable. If you're playing one or two of these big games a year, like as that's probably a normal consumer might do, it's probably not quite as bad. But Dragon's Dogma was different. Even like the original release was different to what was going on at the time. Because 12 years ago, so it wasn't that long after Skyrim, I imagine. Skyrim was what 2011, I think. So like, and that was when it like that was the sort of the biggest open world that we'd sort of seen at the time. And then Dragon's Dogma kind of came along and was just a bit weird. Like it's always been a bit weird. It was a very meme-worthy game before memes were a thing, and it's like the sequel is just. It's kind of the same. Like I saw some people who'd said like it's a bit of a Dragon's Dogma 1.5, which I don't know if that's true. Like I think there's it's new enough, but Capcom kind of do this, don't they? I mean, Monster Hunter is just like every Monster Hunter game is just another iteration on the same kind of.
Well, I mean, everyone does that. Like, you know, Gears of War 1 to Gears of War 2 is always my thing. Like they will. This is a sequel. It's just the difference, I guess, is it's a sequel from 12 years ago, and people there is definitely a connotation that I think if you go away for 12 years, and they kind of did it a little bit with like Devil May Cry 5, Capcom, and a little bit with Monster Hunter World. I think like they sort of came back with a twist.
But I think like with Monster Hunter, that was. A lot of what they did with Monster Hunter World was to get more people to play that franchise, wasn't it? Because Monster Hunter was quite I mean, diehard fans will still argue that World is not my Monster Hunter, whatever.
Yeah, but I would argue that Dragon's Dogma 2, the people who made that game don't actually care if you play
this
it
is
or
what I
not.
was going to say. Like this is the thing where, like, I think if this is the thing where, like, I think if they deviate, because it's Dragon's Dogma, and Dragon's Dogma was so unique, and there's been nothing else really that's done it the same as Dragon's Dogma did it. Like, there's been open worlds, there's been fantasy open worlds, there's been some fantastic stuff. Dragon's Dogma is still kind of unique in its genre, I think. And I think if they'd have deviated too much from that with the sequel, people would have just got it. It wouldn't have done well for them, I don't think. I think if they'd have gone like full on, checklist maps and fast travel and all that,
magic anymore. It wouldn't be.
Yeah,
and I know that sounds like I'm defending it already, but it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be the game at all. No, it wouldn't. And also it would be a game that you could play another 100. There's 100 more of them anywhere else.
And this is the difference, I think. This is why when I started Dragon's Dogma 2, I played like the first 2 hours, and my brain was just going, "This is just Dragon's Dogma." To the point that I had to load up Dragon's Dogma on Steam Deck and play an hour just to see the differences in my own mind, because it was one of those things where, like, like if you see a remaster of the game now and you haven't played it for 15 years, and then you go, "Well, I don't see any difference." Then you look at the old one, so it's kind of like that.
It controls better, I think.
It does
it's
control
a lot smoother
better.
an experience.
I do think the world is amazing. I really am impressed with the open world. I think there's so much detail. And I tell you what's weird about it. It's kind of got that the thing that The Witcher 3's world has, where you can ride around it for hours, or run around, because there's no mounts. You can run around it for hours. And you never really see something that you go, "Oh, I've already seen this bit. They've just reused this and turned it round," or there's none of that. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like the undergrowth and stuff when you're walking through the forests or on the trails. It to me, it felt like I was out in the world, like exploring. And I know there's a little bit, like, for people who maybe don't know, Dragon's Dogma, the original, was famous for it, and this is the same. Monsters kind of just lurk off the path. Like, there's not really a great deal of, like, how like when you played The Witcher 3, for example, you knew where certain monsters were going to be by what they were. Like, you knew where drowners would be, or you'd see like do you know what I mean? You'd see the corpses of stuff, and you'd be like, "Well, there's going to be ghouls there," or you'd see a big nest, and it's like, "Well, that's a griffin." And like, so you had that. And I feel like sometimes in Dragon's Dogma, or Dragon's Dogma 2, it kind of feels a little bit higgledy-piggledy. Like, it kind of feels a little bit like, I can be you're walking up a trail, and then there's goblins, and then you fight the goblins, and then there's wolves, and then there's a griffin, and now there's an ogre, and then you run a bit, and there's bandits, and it kind of feels like, and then also there's wolves and goblins and a griffin and bandits and an ogre, but then, like, there will also be sheep. Just kind of standing around, not really interested by all these predators. So I do think the world is kind of a bit odd like that, but at the same time, just exploring it. I mean, I spent hours just not even playing the actual game, just not even.
I think quests. That's where it's at its best. I have to say, like, I don't hate the main quests, but I feel like the main quests. So I haven't finished it, but so far for me, a lot of the main quests do tend to make you go inside of buildings and talk to people up close, and that's fine. But it is a little bit janky once you're inside buildings and the camera fights you a bit. Whereas I feel once you're out in the open world, it's so. I mean, just a very quick example of today. I was playing today, and you can get. It's really weird, by the way. They said there's no fast travel. Like, that was one of the key things that they were like, there's like multiple versions of it. Neither here nor there. But one of the ways you can do it is you can get on an ox cart and pay, and you just get ridden to wherever that ox cart's destination is. And I just found one in the main town that I hadn't noticed before. And it tells you where it's going to go to. And it was something like checkpoint town. That's the one. Yeah. And I was like, what's that? So I looked in the map and I was like, I don't have that. Okay, let's just jump on. It's not expensive. Jump on, go there. So I go there, get off in town, and then, like, this is one of the things it does. It overwhelms you, and it does it deliberately. Like, someone just comes to you, and it automatically engages you in a conversation with them. And she's talking to me about, I can't remember what it was now, but then someone else, he's come up to me and he's talking to me about something else. And I'm like, right, okay, so you've given me 2 quests, and I've literally just set foot in this town. I'm going to go and find all the potion stores and everything. Fine, let's go to the potions guy. Oh, he's got a quest for me as well, and his grandson is missing, and he was last seen being dragged off by wolves.
Yeah, I couldn't find that kid.
He's not missing. Fuck that. That is not missing. That's dead.
So, spoiler on a side quest you may never see. He's not dead. Okay?
He was for me.
Went off.
I dallied.
Well, I went off, right, and I tried to find him, and because it does give you a quest zone. And I went to that, and then the quest zone disappeared. And I'm like, what's happened? Is it? So I went to the quest.
See, that's the point where I fucked off and did something else,
right.
and then I got a message later that he was dead.
I did that, but having spoken to the people in town, one of them's kind of one of these things where she automatically just gets in your face and starts talking to you. She was talking about flowers and how they glow in the dark, and I was like, well, I saw them. There's like these blue flowers, and so I started following them, and it got me to a bit deeper in. And then just in the... And by the way, if you go to the quest log, it's just got, like, no information. So it tells you, go and find him, but on the map it just says no information. I was like, I don't get this. Anyway, see a cave, and I'm like, wolves like caves. And anyway, do you know what? At this point, I'm kind of past caring about this kid, but I am exploring and getting resources, so I'm going to go and check that cave out. Lo and behold, in that cave, 5 wolves are surrounding a kid who's, like, cowering away with his lantern. Killed the wolves, escorted the kid back to town, which took forever because I kept getting attacked by ogres because it was nighttime and goblins and weird other creatures. Got him back to town and got quite a significant cash reward for doing so. But in any other game, maybe bar Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, maybe bar them, you get a quest marker and it's like, go here. This gives you the information to solve the task. It gets you to roughly the area. It's actually quite a bit further on. And by the way, I found so many other things while I was doing this that's probably why I lost track of my initial, well, it's in this area. Oh, but what's that? And wandered off. And then I found a gated door that I couldn't get into. And I'm like, well, I want to get in there. And I can see a ladder going down, but that's down by the wall. Whatever. Kid's missing. He's been attacked by wolves. Found him. And doing that and walking back to town, I was like, that genuinely felt like an adventure because they did not just go, hey, you game-playing person, go to point A, then talk to B and C, and then they'll tell you to go to D, and that's where kid is, then bring him back to A. It was genuinely like, no, you have to find this kid based on the information we have provided you by you talking to the people of this. And another thing as well, to sort of also add to the positivity of that, I did a quest. I can't even remember what the bloody quest was. It was just something to do with generosity. Like, it was something like this kid kept asking me in the slums. This kid kept asking me for stuff, and I happened to have it, so I just kept giving him. And then, like in the quest guide, it goes, "Come back in a couple of days and see what your generosity has reaped." And I'm like, okay. And I'll go back to the slums. I can't find this kid because this kid is not where they were when I spoke to them. Because they have a life and exist and are real. They're not real. It's a game, but they aren't in any other game. Again, where you found them. They just stay there. And it's like, quest giver, hi. Okay, do my quest. Hi, quest giver, still exactly where I used. It's 3 days later, and now it's the middle of the night, but I'm still just stood here drinking this same mug of drink over and over again. Which I don't know where this kid's gone. I'll find him somewhere.
See, so in that tower. I don't know whether you did this because you're an archer from the beginning, weren't you?
Yes.
So I wasn't. So yeah, there's a guy in town by the weapons seller, right? And I saw him every time I went to town, just standing there. Looks like Legolas. I don't know whether you've noticed him or not, right? So everyone else in town kind of mills around, but in the market square where the sellers are, where the vendors are, everybody kind of sort of is always there. So I didn't notice that people like this guy was kind of part of the furniture. And then because there's no exclamation marks above people's heads or question marks or stars, they're not glowing, there's nothing, so you don't know who's got a quest and who hasn't, literally, unless you go up and talk to them. And this guy who looked like Legolas had been there for the whole game, and I was about 30 hours in, and I pretty much maxed out Archer because I went Thief first. And I happened to like speak to him. I can't even remember what made me do it. And it turned out that he was an elf from the nearby elf town, or not nearby, it's miles away, but the elf town. And he wanted Noah.
You wanted Noah?
He did.
That's a different game. That's Eiyuden Chronicle.
Yeah, and he wanted me to... he wanted a bow made by a human craftsman or with human materials. He didn't want an elven bow or whatever the other bow. It might have been dwarven bow. So at the time I was a bit flush with cash, so I just bought him a bow. Like, I just bought the cheapest bow, which was about 4,000 gold, and I gave it to him. And then because there's no exclamation marks above people's heads or question marks or stars, they're not glowing, there's nothing, so you don't know who's got a quest and who hasn't, literally, unless you go up and talk to them. And I And then because I'd given him the bow, he told me that he was going through this rite of passage that the elves do. So he invited me to go and take part in this like archery competition that he was doing. And it led to like this whole other, which I won't spoil, but it led to this whole other thing.
Yeah, I've seen none of this. Like none of this is ringing any bells.
And like my whole point is that he was just there all the time. He kind of, and I don't know if he ever moved, if he was one of the NPCs that ever moved. I always saw him standing by the weapon vendor in the town
in
Vernworth.
Yeah, I can think. Well, it just become the V.
I had no reason to talk to him. Like there was
nothing
he's there
said for me.
Yeah, nothing
on
had
the
said
far
to me.
Right,
like,
the right hand one of the three.
Yeah.
4, 3. Yeah, now I want to go and play it.
And it was really impressive that he'd just been there the whole time, and I could have just carried on ignoring him. And then I got and I obviously haven't tested it, but then I got to thinking about like a lot of the towns that you go to, the way that you pick up quests in this game, I don't think I've ever seen really another game do it, apart from, like I said, like The Witcher 3. That's what their structure kind of reminds me of. But I think even The Witcher 3, do people have... I don't think people have like exclamation marks or...
There's two games it reminds me of. I mean, not really, but it is still pretty unique. I think it's quite similar to the way Tears of the Kingdom Breath of the Wild does things, in that like everything feels organic. And whether it's because... listen, Heidi's not here this week. Mr. Chris White's not here this week. Maybe between the four of us, they might have gone, oh yeah, I've had that too. Or maybe they wouldn't. Don't know. The other game, it reminds me of a little bit, in terms of how I felt when I'm just roaming, is Oblivion. And I know that's going back a long way, 360 era, but that game was one where I would just wander. It felt like forever. I mean, maybe my memory's hazy now, but I just remember exploring, and it always felt like just organically discovering the right stuff.
I did the same with Skyrim. That's
Skyrim
how
is a
I
lot of
played
people's.
Skyrim.
A lot of people will say that for Skyrim. I was not the biggest fan of Skyrim because I guess I just liked Oblivion more at the time. What we're not, because the thing is, we're talking about sort of apocryphal tales almost of this game. It is worth saying, because what I don't want, it's really difficult, right? Because I love this game, you love it even more.
You've been on a real journey with this game. I've had interesting messages about.
I'm still on it, man. I was the one who said to you, "You'll hate this," and now I'm like, I don't know if you'll hate this, but it is one. I can see this game selling a shitload, right? A lot of copies, and the hype is massive for it. I can almost also see quite a lot of people returning it because it's not what they thought it would be, because it is very unique still. Like it. Mick, in your review, and you said this before you wrote it, this is a game you play on its terms. There is no malleability at all. There is no, oh yeah, but what if? No, it's like you play. I guess it reminds me a bit of that way, in the way Dark Souls, but the first game was, where there was no quality of life. But that's not to say Dragon's Dogma 2 doesn't have some quality of life stuff. Because
they're very
specific. Has some really weirdly... You mentioned it, and I didn't even pick up on it at first. The fact that you can just chuck a load of stuff in your chest and then craft, that's a massive quality of life thing.
I wasn't expecting that. I thought that if I went and had, I thought I'm going to have to schlep all the way back to the inn to get whatever I need to schlep all the way back here to do the craft. And you don't need
just
to
upgrade my bow because it needs 2 goblin stones as well as cash.
Which is really strange because at the same, so sometimes this game is like really stubborn with what it was like. Not necessarily with the fast travel. I kind of made my peace with that fairly early because you do have a resource to fast travel.
You can fast travel, not just by ox.
And they are quite plentiful. I mean, the ox cart. So
it does what Horizon does, mate. Like the first Horizon, where you have to use camping kits to teleport to another bonfire until you get which, by the way, I don't believe exists in Dragon's Dogma 2. In Dark Arisen, it was the Infinite Waystone thing, wasn't it? That's they'll definitely have that
it was called the Eternal Fairy Stone, but I said, it was added into the expansion. But I mean, they do. There is a certain amount. So you have a lot of freedom inside the parameters of the game. So it's kind of like, it's not the sort of game that you can. like, okay, I'll give you another another anecdote, which I spoke to you about the other day because it really surprised me. So I'm just wandering around in the forest. I'm not paying attention to anything. I'm kind of on my way between two towns, but I'm allowing myself to go off the beaten path. You know, everybody's stocked up. I've got potions. Everyone's got full health. I've just rested, so I'm not worrying about things. I'm just exploring. And I come across an ogre, or not an ogre, a cyclops, and it was sleeping. And I thought, I'm going to kill it because, you know, it's XP and they're easy, the Cyclops are. So I attacked this Cyclops and I was fighting it right beside a broken bridge. And it was a bridge that you wouldn't normally be able to get across. There are a couple of...
Well, this wasn't around the same area as this kid, was it?
I don't think
because
so.
There's one there like that where no. Do you know what? It'll be too big. It'll be too big. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, but yeah. So it's a broken bridge. I can't get across, but I'm fighting the Cyclops beside it. My pawn, not my pawn, but one of the ones that I can't say
hired
that
pawn.
Yeah, I'd hired a fighter pawn, a warrior with a big, and she led the Cyclops onto the bridge. And when you hit big enemies in this game, when you hit them enough in a certain way, the pawns will shout to you and say, "One more big blow, master, and you'll knock it down," or whatever. So I notched up my one of my big arrows and I hit it, I think, with an explosive arrow, and it toppled the Cyclops. But instead of falling off the bridge, it fell between the two broken parts of the bridge and clung on to the bridge. This is I didn't get footage of it because it sounds like something you'd make up, but it clung to the other end of the bridge. And my pawn went, "Now we have a way to cross." And I walked over the Cyclops, got to the other side of the bridge, and then it fell off into the water and the brine got it and I got my XP. But that, I thought to myself, in any other game, that would be scripted.
It would be, 100%. It'd be a cutscene. It'd be a cutscene in any other game.
It just happened, and it was really, really strange. And I was like trying to get a screenshot, and it wouldn't take a screenshot because it was PlayStation's pre-release, and then I was gutted that I couldn't, and I wasn't recording either because I was just meandering around the forest. But there's a lot. There's so much freedom and so many ways to do things inside of that.
I also do think that the director is kind of messing with us at times. There's a certain I noticed this today. I noticed it before, and I was like, is that always happening? So there's the way they speak. How would you describe the way the dialect? It's like,
I called it Pigeon Shakespeare. It's not quite that, but it's.
But so they use the word ought, and when I say that, I'm saying it with an A, as in, is there aught of interest there? And I don't know if this is just my characters I'm running around with, but they will always say two sentences, and they will say, "I wonder if there's aught of value up there. We ought to investigate." So it's like they deliberately use ought with an A and then ought with an O every time. And it was only today when I was like, no, that is every time that's happening. And there's no question to me that some people will hear that dialogue and just be like, what the hell's going on? Like, what the hell is going on? Why do they keep going on about me being their master and how they're never happier than when they're by my side? And this is this weird sycophancy journey. And like, there are quests where like the logic of the game itself doesn't feel like it's correct, but I can't stop thinking about it. I can't.
Yeah, this is what the thing is with me.
Explore it.
This is when I think the first few hours were quite rough because I was just thinking of the first game and I was waiting for stuff to open up, and I was just and I don't know what it was, but
you do have to adjust.
Yeah, the little things annoyed me at the beginning. The little things annoyed me at the beginning, like the fast travel. I was like, because I'm so used to open worlds where I just go, well, there's a quest, I'm just going to teleport there. And so you've kind of been spoiled by other games in a way, but at the same time, after a certain amount of time, I just kind of felt myself like going with it, and it was just like, and even stuff like one of probably the most annoying thing. The only thing I would probably take out if I could take it out would be that mechanic where you take damage and then you've got depleted health. That annoys me in any game, and it annoys me in this because I don't see why it happens, because you have magical healing and you've got magical potions and like, I don't understand it. Like, if it reduced your stamina because you were tired, maybe I'd get it, but you can literally end up running around with like 15% health or something, and then you're probably going to die in the next fight that you have. And then obviously there's only one save. You only have one save per playthrough, so you can't even have like multiple saves. You can't, and that also stops you from. It doesn't stop you from taking risks, but it makes you think about everything you do, which I think was the intention.
Well, but that's what I mean about it breaking its own rules a little bit, because like I don't know if this has happened to you, but so I was. The pre-release marketing, well, not the marketing, but the way it's been reported, I guess, and the way people have talked about this game, it is very, very much like it's an adventure, one save file. You can't do this, that, and the other. And it's like, it tells you, I think, at the beginning of the game, listen, save often because, like, we're not auto-saving for you. But it is.
There
are elements of where it wants you to think it's more hardcore. So I had forgotten, because it only comes up once, save often. Like, it's not a game, because you're not fast traveling everywhere, it's not really a game where you're seeing many loading screens. It's kind of if you die, but generally speaking, you're not seeing loading screens because there's no fast travel. And to be honest with you, when you do fast travel, it loads pretty instantly anyway. But that's not the hill there. So I went into like a big cave and I explored all the way through it, and then I died, and then it comes up with like a bit like the Dark Souls thing, you're dead sort of thing, and then like load from last save, and I just went, what? What do you mean last save? What? That was an hour ago. And it was genuinely one of those, like, if you now put me back in that other town that I was in before this adventure an hour ago, I'm probably going to stop.
Yeah.
Because it's too much. Like, everyone's got their threshold. Everyone's got their threshold of like half an hour. You might go, I really like this, I'm going to do it. An hour for me is a bit like, I can't. Because if I forget to do it again down the line, 2 hours, it's just, that's personal preference. It had saved. It had saved when I went in the cave. So it's like, why do you want people to be like fearful of your mechanics? Why not just say, look, you should save often, but we're kind of not going to do that to you. Because I was genuinely like, when the screen was loading, I was like, if this appears and I'm back in town, we're done. It was really that much. I was looking at it going, go on, fucking try it. And it was.
I think it also saves the world state a little. I think that's probably because, for instance, like the Griffin, it took me ages to finally kill a Griffin because it kept fucking off every time I got it down to a certain amount of health. It would just stop and bugger off. And I noticed that I think there was one time when I fought the Griffin right down to the point where it left, and everybody was nearly dead. Like it was quite a battle. Everybody was nearly dead. And on the way to the next campfire, I stumbled across a rock golem, which I then had to. Well, it went for me, and it was between me and the campfire. And long story short, it killed me. But it reloaded me back at the point after the Griffin had buggered off.
Yeah.
And I hadn't saved.
It definitely auto-saves. It definitely auto-saves. Like I said, I don't know why it wants you to think it isn't. I think
it saved the fact that the Griffin was limping off.
Yeah, like a world state.
They then go and heal up somewhere, I presume.
So it could be then that I actually got incredibly lucky. And that because I walked into this cave, which actually there are side stories in, it could be that I got a bit lucky that it save stated the world because there is like a locked door in there and there is a quest in there that I could have interacted with, maybe. I don't know. We should talk about other games because we're probably going to be talking about Dragon's Dogma for weeks to come. So
yeah, and I know that the other two who aren't here have very interesting takes themselves. So and maybe I'll even play it. Who could
I would like to hear what you think of it. Like I say, when we first chatted, I was like, I think you'll bounce too hard off this, but I do think it's one. Well, we've got a question in listener correspondence about it, so we'll perhaps come back to it anyway. But let's move on from one huge open world game to another. Well, I think based on what I've played, looks like it's going to be pretty huge as well. I'm going to try and pronounce it, Lyle. Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. You have previewed the first, I think, 5 hours?
5 hours. Yep,
I've played about 2 and a bit of it. I would like to play more, but Lyle, talk to me about 100 Heroes.
So yeah, Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes is... people might remember... I mean, it was originally a Kickstarter game, but people might remember a couple of years ago, they released kind of like a weird intro game, Eiyuden Chronicle.
It was a bit
Rising.
like what Bloodstained gang did, wasn't it? Where they did Bloodstained, but they did like that 16-bit, 8-bit version.
Yeah, it was like a side-scrolling
action game. Yeah, and it was good, but it wasn't amazing. But what they were really like, this team have been wanting to release and working on is Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, which is like in all but name the new Suikoden game. It is It literally is two legends who made like I think were like producers or something ridiculously high up on like Suikoden 1 and 2 and Suikoden 2 and 4 or something, who were like, we want to make more of this game. We know it's got a really like big cult following, and that's what they're doing, and it's going to be coming out, real soon. So yeah, got to play 5 hours of it, and it's like it's really good in how it balances like being a very sort of like traditional like throwback to that sort of like PS1 era like JRPG. I think even as you would load up the game, it literally says in text like this is for all like the long-term JRPG fans who've been waiting for this or something like that. And it's this turn-based RPG where the whole hook is, I mean, there's a big world in peril, war on the horizon, which I'm pretty sure the war is going to be the rest of the game.
Yeah, I got that feeling.
But the whole hook of it is the 100 heroes are that there are at least 100 characters that you can recruit into your party in this game. So, like, if you're thinking about any RPG where of that sort of era where you'd be like, you'll have like 8 party members, 10 party members, and you'll maybe have a team of 4 and you'll pick your favorites. Like, it's basically that, but imagine if there was 100. And like, not
it was 108, wasn't it, in Suikoden? Was it 108?
Something like that, yeah. And they've called this 100 heroes, but I'm sure there's kind of like sort of like trying to be like, yeah, there's definitely at least 100 winks.
103 heroes doesn't sound as good.
No, it doesn't. True. And I assume there'll be some like really like ridiculously hard to find ones.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was going to ask you about that because we were talking about Dragon's Dogma and the sort of emergent gameplay. I know it's a buzzword. I know people hate it. So you do a tutorial hour, I guess, where it introduces mechanically the game. It's standard stuff in a JRPG, but it's actually a dungeon. It's like more than what you'd think. And then you are basically told go and recruit people for our gang, kind of thing.
That's all it says. It just says go and recruit people. It doesn't say recruit many people.
It doesn't say recruit Lyle from that place. It's like just go and recruit people, and you then do a bit of Dragon's Dogma where you're like, I wandered around the town talking to everyone, and I'm like, okay, well, I gotta leave town then. And then I found someone like in another area. It's that discoverability factor.
Yeah, when you were saying all this in Dragon's Dogma, I was like, this actually is a weirdly
I was trying not to lead into it too early, but it is. Yeah. There's definitely similar elements.
So, like, you'll go around the town. I'd say the main way I was able to tell if someone was probably going to join my party is they'd look a bit more interesting than everyone else. Like, they'd be dressed in a bit more, like, snazzy outfit. I'd be like,
funnily enough, Dragon's Dogma kind of does that as well. Like, if they look a bit ropey, they're probably just a one-line chat.
Yeah. So yeah, you'll go into these towns and you'll be like, one of the first ones I found was this guy who was like a hunter. He was like, oh well, you're trying to like recruit people to your like do-gooders little guild who help out people.
I haven't found this one yet at all.
Oh yeah, he was my first. You go into this town. And he says, he says, you're trying to recruit people into your thing. Well, okay, I'll join you, but if you're able to prove that you've killed 6 wild boar, so it's quite a basic quest.
Oh god, that would have been so much easier than the one I found first. It ended in a really tough boss fight.
Oh, that was the last one I found in the demo.
Where you have to well, we're allowed to talk about it, so it's not spoiling it, is it? We can talk about. There's a boss fight where it goes underground and comes back up, and you've got like what are they called? There's like interactive elements.
They're each in boss battles. They've got things. I think they just call them gimmicks. I think
they do call them gimmicks. You're right, yeah. But they are, and it's fair enough. Like,
totally. It's just like they're very honest about it. But like,
I died in that boss fight, I think twice. I found that really tough.
I bet I would have if I hadn't got like 5 levels up before.
Yeah, no, I really was like, wow, this is not messing. Because it's not messing. I mean, I did it. But I did end up literally like crawling back to town, like, please, no encounters because I will die. And I will, but like, oh, okay, that is.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought
it was thorough.
Yeah, and that area, by the way, is where those boars are. You have a few encounters with them. Yes. So I went through. So I did that, killed a few boars. He was like, okay, I'll join you. And like, you start with, it's a 6-party member like game. I think there's a few slots that are supposed to be for like support members.
It wasn't when I was doing that boss fight.
Yeah,
it wasn't 6 people.
But yeah, like you start with 3, and once you sort of let loose into the world. But yeah, so he was the first one I found, and then there was another one who like a little bit north in that same town was just like some like foul-mouthed mage who literally just came after I chatted with her, and it was like have one little chat and you're a party member.
Wow.
But like, yeah, you're exploring this world. It's got quite a few different places you can go to. Like it's a decent chunk of open world before it like barricades you off. But I had done basically, I hadn't got the party member you're talking about, but I'd like been to every location on the world map. Had like a party of like 6 or maybe 7. So I was like with one spare where I was like thinking I'd maybe swap them in, and I was like, I've not been told to come back to the base or anything yet, and I'm like pretty sure I've explored everywhere.
Wow.
So like, I'd done all this. I was like, okay, well, I'll go back there. I want to go back to like the inn at that like starting town anyway, because I want to change my party member. I like this 7th member I've just got, and I got there, and the quest giver that the new party member that you found like ran into me and talked to me. And I was like, well, I explored this town when I was first here. I don't know why you didn't talk to me the first time, or like why this didn't
So do you
trigger
think
the
it could
first
be
time.
like again random world states? Like they just because
I have no idea,
or
if it was just...
I'm sure I chatted to everyone.
Like, I don't know. I have no idea if like it was just that I went because basically I thought I explored that first town like right at the very beginning. I was like, oh, I've chatted to everyone here. I'll go off.
Oh, so I see. Okay.
So I hadn't had it trigger that like I think she's a magical girl. I think she calls herself
Magic Girl. Yeah, she
Yeah.
does. Yeah. She's like very
quite.
She's probably not tropey, but it is very.
Oh yeah, but like
I want that a little bit. Like, I mean, I was already impressed with this game, and what you're telling me now is like, holy shit! What? Okay.
Yeah,
what?
totally. So yeah, I came back to the town because I thought I was like, well, I don't know what else to do. I want to change my party members before I carry on anyway. This person that you met first and tried to beat a boss with 3 party members chatted to me.
All I'm thinking is like, what do you mean you changed your party members? I didn't even have a full party fight. Just to get her to she didn't even join. She was in my party, but she hadn't actually officially joined.
No, not officially. And then, but then like after that, I was like, okay, well, I'll go back to the base to change my party members. And that was when the guy was like, okay, you've got enough party members. Like, here's like a whole trigger of like the next part of the story. And it's like I didn't need to have got the party member that you'd found. I didn't need to have. I don't know at what point I had the amount that they were happy with. I just got back there and they were like, okay, cool, yeah, you can go do your next quest now. And I was like, you didn't tell me. You didn't expect me to be like checking in. You didn't say get a full team of 6 and then check back in. And there's like
no, they just tell you go and get party members, don't they?
So I did, and yeah, when I came back, so like there's a lot of exploration. There's a lot of like you'll just find something, and I mean, in a lot of ways as well. I can't imagine for like a very standard playthrough you'll really need to find everything. So it's like there'll be some that'll be a bit missing. There'll be a few that you don't encounter the first time. You might end up going back to a really old area and like finding someone and being like, I bet I could have had you like 10 hours ago.
Because I remember, sorry about that, just what you were saying about like the not finding everything. Because obviously I haven't played. I bought Suikoden and Suikoden.
What PlayStation 1 games?
First 2 were PlayStation 1, and then it was PlayStation 2 for the next 3, and there was a DS one later or something.
And I got the first 2 on Vita when I had the Vita. Still have some of it, doesn't work anymore. When I had the PS Vita, I got the 1 and 2 on that just to play, and I ended up just playing the second one. But like,
are you sure you don't mean PSP?
No, it was definitely the Vita.
Definitely
I think you can do it on both.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely got them on Vita. Okay, but I vaguely remember playing it originally, like back on PS1 a long, long time ago. And this was like, it always makes it sound old, but it was like internet, like where you could just Google where these characters were or where the heroes were. And I don't think I ever found all of them. I don't believe I ever found all of them in that. No. And I mean, now, people will. With 100 heroes. And then if you don't, you'll look up a guide and it will tell you where they are, and you'll go and get them because you want the trophies or you want whatever. But like it that sort of level of exploration in it, and again, it
so
are
we entering a new era then where games are doing that? Do you think?
Well,
Dragon's
Dogma
parallels
with like Dragon's Dogma 2, and like and again, like you could mention maybe Remnant 2. You get that these days where games now, and I love it. I love that we're sort of moving back into this. And yet, fair enough, you're going to have Johnny YouTube's going to be like here, here's where everything is, video after video after video.
That's
because
the title of this week's podcast. I think. YouTube.
No, but you know what I mean. That's what happens now. You can't open YouTube without somebody spoiling everything. We found.
Hey, listen, we can't be like highbrow about this. We do plenty of guides. We can't.
Yeah, I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking it. But that wasn't the point. My point was like that era of just being able to go out and explore felt like it was something that was almost dead, and now there's just this resurgence of it in the last few years.
That would have been so much easier. Just having, it doesn't even matter who they would have been if I just had a full party.
Oh, yeah.
It would have been so much easier, that battle. That was so hard.
Because you talked about how hard that battle was, and I was like,
it was
sort of like a vaguely like difficult boss. I guess I think someone died at some point, and I gave him a healing item.
I don't really want to spoil it, but the gimmick of it is kind of like it's luck based. It's 50-50 luck based in the gimmick of that battle. And if you mess it up and didn't get the luck, you just took a beating that turn.
Yeah.
You just took a beating. and like, so I don't know, like, of the characters you had then when you played it, did you have a healer? Because I didn't have a healer. It was items.
Yeah, I had a healer.
See, by the time I got there, because I didn't have a healer,
played easy mode, and you just straight on
intentionally.
extreme.
I just ran into this girl, and she said, "Oh, I'm going to go." And she tells you the story, and you're like, "Well, she's clearly an important part of the story, so I'm going to follow her." And it seems that it doesn't even then go, and there's a ping on the map. It just looked. I was like, that kind of looks like the way I'm heading, because it does that. It's a lovely looking game. We haven't even talked about that. It's a beautiful looking game.
So good looking.
It sounds great. It was more voice acting than I was expecting. What we should talk about, and again, this is all preview, so you can see it's sort of less than left impression, but in preview sense, the combat is both retro but like so modern for me. Like, I wasn't 100% sure at first, and then I got it, and it's like, so Lyle, you explain to me how the combat works. So, I know, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. I'm not explaining to you. I'm explaining to the
and
universe
to Mick, I guess.
Yeah. So the combat is you'll eternal start, and you'll basically get to pick all 6 of your team's abilities, and along the top of the screen or along the side or something, it'll say like what order them and the enemies are going to attack into. Yeah. So then you'll tell them to attack. You'll tell them to do whatever. You'll be like, you heal, you attack there, you use this ability. And then once you've picked it all, they basically all just like jump into combat really quickly. So like you'll have one character jump in and swing their sword, and then the other will fire the bow, but it'll be like this, then this, then this. It's like, it's really rapid fire. It means you're not like just waiting for these animations. It's not like, first party member steps forward, swing, damage number, steps back. Like, it's one after the other. It's really nice and seamless. It just feels really, really good, really quick. Like there's even in the early stages, there's just enough enough strategy to get stuck into, but at the same time, there's also like a really like in-depth auto battle option.
Yes, yeah, bloody hell! I saw that and I was like, no, not a preview phase. I can't because this looks like people will be. I can see Johnny YouTube doing videos of like, this is the auto battle settings, and he just clicks a button, and it's like
like you can be like, for each character, it can be like, you can be like, okay, you never use more than this SP, so you always have at least this amount of skill points in case I have to take over. If this enemy has this amount of health, attack them, or if like you have this whole like priority list you basically set up of like what you could want them to do.
For a system, by the way, you could completely ignore if you just want to play it all manually.
Oh, totally. And a system that you could just keep as an auto battle where you just like, it's a fairly easy encounter, just go in and swing your weapons. Like, that's also fine. You can have it set to literally just be, what an auto battle would be in a lot of RPGs, where it's just everyone swings their weapon one after the other. And that totally works. But it's this really customizable, like, it's when you know that this game's going to be, I feel like 50 hours is like probably about the minimum if I'm going to guess.
It's hard to tell, but I mean, with 100 characters to find, you've got to assume it's on the bigger side. We don't know, by the way. This isn't like,
we don't know, obviously.
Like, we don't know. It just...
No, not a clue. But it's one of those games where it's like, in a game where if it is that long, if there's going to be some stretches where you're, you feel confident enough in your leveling up, or you're in a dungeon where maybe the encounters are getting on you a little bit, because I think maybe the only criticism I had during this preview is I thought that like there were some areas where the encounter rate felt like a little bit like, oh god, I'm just getting these random encounters again and again, and it was a little bit like, I feel almost not used to this anymore. Like most games have like little monsters wandering about that you can either dodge or you can. But again, another way it's a throwback. And for the most part, it didn't annoy me. But there was like a couple of times where I was like, I've not really walked far enough, and I'd already taken a wrong path to go to like look for some treasure and like.
Oh, so you get that thing of where you walk off left to check for something and there's nothing there, and you're like, God damn it, I am gonna get an encounter on the way back. Because...
just like not a big deal, but that little bit of like a damn it. I would have rather not gone down there and had to do that. So yeah, like, but this is a game that is it's sort of trying to be of that time, but
Yeah.
it's doing it in a way where a lot's been modernized. There's some really cool elements, and yeah, like you say, the visuals are something else. They're kind of like they're like sort of 2.5D, like HD, 2D, all that sort of all those fun buzzwords. But it's like the character models are like ridiculously detailed. Like it doesn't sort of look like it's a like a spruced up SNES game where they've made it all pop. It's like it looks like it's like these really modern sprites, but still the sort of like 3D backgrounds to go with them. It's really lovely looking, and yeah, it's one I'm really looking forward to. Now I wasn't sure what to expect, because I mean, especially with something like this, with like a Kickstarter game from a new studio and all that sort of thing, you never really know how much they're gonna like perfectly encapsulate it. But it seems like, I mean, it's looking promising so far anyway.
I mean, certainly an emotionally loaded game with obviously what's happened with Murayama. Like it's it's like it's been a while since I played because I don't even have the problem you mentioned with like the encounter rate. Like I found it a little bit erratic in terms of like it would be short then it long, but again, as you say, because of the era it's harking to. I genuinely, with what I've played of it, I'm like, I actually have no criticisms of this game. I mean, listen, I've played 2-3 hours of a game that, as you say, is probably 50 hours, so we can't really be sure. And like Dragon's Dogma is a perfect example of a game you can preview it twice, you've seen nothing of it. I mean, I feel like mechanically, at least, I've kind of got a handle on this, and I want to play a lot more. But I do. I'm now under pressure with Persona 3 Reload to finish, because I cannot have 2 JRPGs on the go.
No,
I can't. I can't. We've got a couple more games we want to talk about this episode, and then we'll get into some listener correspondence. We won't spend an awful lot of time on them, but Mick, give us a bit of a lowdown. If you give the lowdown on Rise of the Ronin, I'll give a bit of a lowdown on Alone in the Dark, and yeah, you go for it.
I'll chime in a bit.
Oh yeah, you played it. Yeah, I forgot.
So yeah, Rise of the Ronin then is it's another big open world, and it is a big open world. This is. You couldn't have 2 open world games released on the same day that were so different in almost every single conceivable way. To even compare them, to even be like, because I know people were saying, oh, if I'm going to play one open world game this week, it's going to be Dragon's Dogma 2. Well, that's fine if that was your choice.
This week.
But yeah, this, you know what I mean. But this, the Rise of the Ronin is completely different. And look, this is sort of, I don't want to like insult it, but it's kind of Ghost of Tsushima light in a way. Like it's very much like it's more like Ghost of Tsushima, I feel, than it is like Neo or Wolong, like Fallen Dynasty, which are obviously Team Ninja's like recent. They were very, they were Souls likes, I guess, but they were more like Ninja Gaiden likes, like in many ways. That's like but they were mission structured. They were, the combat was punishing. They didn't have difficulty settings and things like that. So I think a lot of people came into Rise of the Ronin kind of expecting a certain thing. And I think, like with Dragon's Dogma 2, I think there's a possibility that people would be getting something different to what they expect, because, like, there's, for example, in Rise of the Ronin, there's difficulty setting. So it's set in Japan. It's towards the end of the Edo period. So there's a lot of Western elements to it. It's also like there's guns. You can get a horse, so you can go and roam around the world. Like I said, it's a little bit like Ghost of Tsushima, I guess, but that is reductive, because they're just both set in Japan. If it was set somewhere else, you probably wouldn't
know, because you have stances that you can switch between that are better for certain enemies, and that's something Tsushima did significantly. Like, if you want to fight type A enemy, you would be better off with, are these water stance, do I want to say?
It's something like that. What, in Rise of the Ronin? Oh no, in Tsushima.
In Tsushima, it was like one was a water stance, and like the one was for good, and it does do that, doesn't it, Ronin?
But I think, I think Rise of the Ronin has, if you want to play it, if you want that level of difficulty, I think it's there. Like, if you wanted to, if you want to whack, because I think it is. I played it on normal. I did drop it to easy once or twice, to be honest, mainly for expediency. But like, if you wanted that challenge, if you wanted to have that sort of not as necessarily a Souls-like experience, but if you wanted that extra level of sort of punished difficulty, you could whack it up to the higher difficulty, and I think you get somewhere near. Like there's a lot of weapons.
Is this the game that
of
proves
weapons.
that accessibility argument of difficulty for those games is moot? Because I think if you whack this on hard, it will be too much for me. I think normal is difficult enough that I was like,
Yeah.
But if you put, and I feel like if you stick it on easy, what you get is a kind of, oh god, no, I'm gonna do it, but a Ubisoft checklist game with that kind of cool combat. Whereas if you stick it on normal and higher, you end up with a Souls-like Neo style game. And like, is this the game that renders that argument a little bit moot? Because it does it. It's you can do it. It can be done, right?
Yeah, you absolutely could. But I don't think I would want to, I think I would want to try and put that difficulty up. And because when I played normal, so when I played it on the normal difficulty, I didn't find that I had to worry too much about the stances. Like there's because and in this, so it's not so in Tsushima, you've got like your sword, you change it cosmetically, but it's always the same sword. So your stances are what Jun is what's his name? What's his name?
Something like that.
Jin Sakai, yeah.
Yes.
So your stances are what he knows, like he already. Whereas in Rise of the Ronin, obviously you are a samurai, but each weapon has a certain number of different stances associated with it, and you get taught those by people you meet. Sometimes you pick them up from beating a boss. Sometimes it's part of a quest. Sometimes you'll do a side quest and you'll learn a new stance, or you'll do because you've got. Which I'll come to very briefly, but like you've got these characters, the NPCs that will come with you, which is like your blade twin, because that's the gimmick of this game is that you have a blade twin, and when you get separated, you go out into the world to find another blade twin, and you actually recruit quite a lot of blade twins, and then when you go to certain missions that are relevant to those characters, you have the option to take them with you. And a lot of these characters have their own specific play styles. And it's quite clever. I mean, some of these you can miss. I mean, I killed a guy that later on could have been a blade twin if I'd let him live. I'm not going to spoil any more than that. But like that, I thought that was quite cool. I didn't realise this. Someone else who was reviewing it at the time told me this happened. And I was like, oh, fair enough. So that, but like this. Like I said, the stances kind of come from what you learn while you're playing. So you start off with like when you get a weapon, sometimes they come with a couple of stances equipped. But if you want to, you can go out and learn all these other stances, and then you can equip those. So you can have a weapon with several, like more than 3 or 4, and you can equip up to 3 stances on that weapon. And then it does have kind of a rock, paper, scissors effect with the enemies. So if you're playing it on hard, coming back to that, if you're playing it on the highest difficulty level, those stances become more important because it's not just a case of, well, I'll parry and then riposte, or I'll dodge this. It becomes a case of, well, I'm not doing any damage. Like I can't do anything to this guy. I can't break his defense or get through him. So I have to change my stance. So it does have that element of complexity, which I think people who came from Neo and Wo Long will be hoping for. But at the same time, you can also, if you want, you can put it on easy and you can just roam around the world, or you can go gliding, use your grappling hook, you get your horse and it doesn't have the same level of like emergent gameplay. We keep saying that tonight, but it doesn't have the same level of emergent gameplay as like a Dragon Ball.
Year of emergent gameplay.
Yeah, but it does have a big open world to go and explore, and there are secrets to find, and there are little side quests down nooks and crannies and caves. Yeah, so it is, yeah. It's a good game. It is a good game.
Yeah,
I don't think it's necessarily up there in the higher echelons of a PS5 exclusive.
No, but you gave it an 8 out of 10, which is fair.
I gave it 8 out of 10. Yeah.
But then we're in this weird state now where I think when you see an exclusive, you expect, because I'm not talking about it this week, but Princess Peach Showtime, I gave an 8 to, and I think because it's like a Nintendo exclusive, people expect 10s now, and it's like you can't. It's just not how it works. Like
it's also tough though because there's so many games that when games are 8s, you're like, well, I could just play a few 9s. There's about 1 billion of them to play too. So
that's true. I'm not as gone on Rise of the Ronin as you, but mainly because I'm struggling not to compare it to Tsushima, and Tsushima is one of those games where, like it or not, you can't deny how polished and cinematic it is.
Yeah.
And
this is what
I'm
I think
missing,
lets it down slightly.
Like Rise of the Ronin, when you pick an upgrade in the skill tree, it just sort of goes thunk and unlocks. Like there is zero drama, zero
Yeah,
Like, there's
the
no
game
hit.
just hands you stuff. It's just like,
and
here's a horse,
non-stop.
here's this, here's that.
Here's a
And
glider,
there's
just
not-
jump off there and use it, and that's it. Done.
There's no
Finished. You got the glider now.
ceremony to it. I
No,
think.
none
And
at all. No,
I think it's a game that would have benefited from a little bit of ceremony.
Just like a little, like even when you unlock, I'm sure that it literally goes thud when you unlock stuff in the menus. It's like a thud sound. It's like, I'm really surprised. Yeah, it's not a bad game by any stretch.
We'll be back here again talking about these sort of games at the end of the year when Assassin's Creed, is it Assassin's Creed Jade or Red or whatever it's called, the samurai one that's coming.
I didn't even know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm so out of that franchise now that I can't keep.
I still love Assassin's Creed, but I love me a checklist.
Well, yeah. I mean, let's move on then to Alone in the Dark. You can go and read, obviously, or if you're watching on YouTube, and do that so you can see our lovely faces, you can watch Mick's video review of Rise of the Ronin, or go and read a old-fashioned scored one where Johnny YouTube hasn't got involved. If again, you can do the same with Alone in the Dark, and we won't spend a million years talking about this one. It is interesting because they've brought back basically a reimagining of the first game, but they've kind of Resident Evil-ified it. Like it's a third-person action shooter now. It really does. I played it. I can't remember the first game. I can remember that. I think there's a reboot of Alone in the Dark where there's a driving level late on in it. I think on the Xbox 360. I want to say I remember like getting 1,000 gamer score for that when I used to chase gamer score.
Oh yeah, I know the one you mean. I don't remember.
Flames and everything, and it was
that was
really
the one where you
awkward.
famously like fast forward through levels so you didn't have to play them or something.
That's
like
the
it
one.
had this really weird skip mechanic, didn't it?
That's the one. There's none of that in here. There's an old school thing where you get no hints. I strongly would advise.
Yeah, don't fucking turn that on.
I would advise against playing it that way. There are 2 6-7 hour campaigns. Emily and Edward. Emily played by Jodie Comer. Edward played by every time I nearly say Harper. It's David. No, yeah,
David Harbour.
David Harbour is the actor. Harper is a Stranger Things character, and it really.
No, that's Hopper.
Who the hell's Harper?
I have no idea who Harper is. You made him up.
No one corrected me. I've been referring to it as the Harper playthrough. Anyway, I played as Emily, and I did play a little bit of Edward. It's all right. Like it. I was going to play through the Edward playthrough. Okay, I was going to go through and get like because. Lowell, did you finish it?
No, I didn't. I didn't want to go back to it.
No, that's fine.
So I'll be back on this later.
Yeah. No. So it's quite a short game. Well, it's not a short game. It's 6-7 hours, depending on difficulty, and that's kind of what I want from. Yeah, and you play it twice. But that's the thing. So the Emily story goes fine. Like it all makes sense. The story's fine, and you meet up with Edward now and again, and sort of almost. But it's weird. So a lot of what's happening, I think, is supposed to be psychological and in your head, or isn't. I'm not 100% sure on that. But then when you meet up with your erstwhile colleague, they're like, "No, what the hell are you talking about?"
Yeah, because you said this to me that was happening in your playthrough, and I was playing as David Harbour. Harper.
Yeah.
And you were saying that happened, and I was like, no, that happened the other way around.
It didn't happen because that's So that's why I stopped playing my Harper playthrough, because when I got to scene this, so the cutscenes are different. They are different, but they amount to similar. So I saw one early on as Edward where he's acting erratically because he's just been through some sort of weird.
Otherworld nightmare.
Yes,
shit.
And she really is like giving him proper side eye, like this guy. She's all but going cuckoo. You know what I mean? She might as well be. She is properly like going, yeah, okay. It's like, no, because in my playthrough I was you, and he kind of was also like, you're right, like. And
so it's not like Resi, where it's supposed to be
I don't know, because
some of Resident Evil 2 overlaps, doesn't it? I don't think everything overlaps, does it?
This definitely overlaps, because the scenes, like I say, the scenes are the same from opposite perspectives, but they're also the same perspective when they can't be the same perspective.
It feels like they could be doing something really clever and psychological, but it also feels a bit nonsense and weird.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, maybe if I'd played more of the Edward, it does make sense. I mean, there were definitely scenes. I spoke to Chris White, who reviewed it, that he said there are definitely scenes where it's like, no, they're completely different. And there's a thing in this game for the collectibles, they call them lagniappes, and there are some only available in certain playthroughs, which suggests to me they must be different locationally some point. But the thing is about it, the reason I mention this is because you get to the end, and the story actually wraps up all right for Emily. And then I'm not going to spoil it, so don't rush for your headphones or whatever, or the pause button. But like the actual end, it takes like a turn so violently sudden. I don't mean violent in terms of punching. I mean like just it's that like what the that I'm like, well, hang on. So this must be explained if you play through as Edward, because otherwise, this is batshit, like in term, and I don't mean like in a way of like, oh, I'm not getting it. It's like, no, this is ridiculous that you have gone from this for say 6.5 hours and then just gone, and then just gone like, yeah, like so I don't know. I need to speak to Chris White, who reviewed it, about this, because I kind of want it to have some sort of resolution. But when I started playing as Edward, I was like,
game again.
Well, it wasn't that. It's that I don't know if you've got far enough to feel this, but there's an awful lot of running back and forth in this game, which is again, Resident Evil. Like you go back to the originals, they do this, like and even Resi like 2 remake, you're running through the police station over and over again. Mm-hmm. I think because the map is actually really good in Alone in the Dark. It will tell you like, here's a puzzle. Now here's a puzzle you can actually now have the solution to. And
it tells you when.
Yeah,
when
that's again, you can turn all that off, but like, why would you? But because of that, I think I ended up relying on it quite a lot, and that meant that I didn't quite take in the Deserto Mansion in a way that became memorable to me. So when I started my playthrough as Edward, like a week after finishing it, I got stuck again, and I'm like, I know what I've got to do because I've done it. I just can't remember how I get in that room, and eventually I did do it, and then I got a cutscene that was like identical, and then I went for another one of those transition scenes where you go to another place, and it was identical again, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to play another 2 hours to get, because I suspect chapter 3 and well, I thought it was 2, but it definitely isn't. I suspected like chapter 2 and 4 where it massively diverges.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't hate it.
Yeah.
I don't hate it. I don't love it. I certainly don't love it. I'm glad it's back, and I hope that they get like another go at it, and I hope it does well enough that they get another go at it. But it's flawed.
But I liked it less than you as well.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I found it. The word that sprung to mind and didn't ever leave my mind while I was playing it was tepid. Was the word that I thought of. It was just sort of like, it was like if a Resident Evil game was just like, they'd sort of like scraped away the bits I liked and left the remnants, and that was what I was playing.
It's not scary either, is it?
It's not scary at all, no, and it's not...
It's tense in moments, but...
Yeah, and then I think the thing, maybe more than anything, that, well, maybe not more than anything, but one of the things that really put me off was I thought that, like, the like voice performances were like kind of dire. Like to me, I thought that like David Harbour's like voice acting, because he was who I was playing as, was like they'd just found him in the back of a pub at 10 p.m. and someone had told him his cat had died, and then he had to work for 5 hours on some voice lines. Like
he does kind of have that style though, David Harbour.
He does.
He's quite a subdued actor, isn't he? Like
he kind of has that. Oh, it's just a normal bloke who's managed to get on a film set, is acting, and you're like, well, just go with. I will say, I don't think that's true of Jodie Comer. Like I played as her.
I didn't think so as much either. When I saw her in the scenes, I was like, no, I can't think. But like, yeah, I was just sort of like, I was just sort of playing along. Like, why is he not reacting in any sort of a norm, in a way that is anything other than bored?
It's really exaggerated some of it as well, though. I found like as far as I got with his, is some of it was like it was either. It's kind of like a switch. He was either on or off.
Yeah.
That was like, I think Emily is the canon playthrough because it feels like it's more about her. Long story short, we were all playing it, so we were like, we'll play as this and you play as that, and it was like it's fine. It's difficult to say like, yeah, go buy it. If you're a big fan of Alone in the Dark, it's worth having a look at, and it isn't like it's not long. And look,
no.
To be honest with you, you probably get as much from it just sticking on easy and like it does that thing with I think Resi. Which Resi did it? If you stick it on easy, that has like an auto aim snap. So if you hold left trigger, it will.
I remember you saying.
It does that, I think, in Alone in the Dark. So like you can get through it, as it were. But like I do think it's what I almost think it's worth finishing just to see how the ending just goes.
I know
like,
you have said
what?
that, and I'm like, oh, but it sounds interesting.
No, it's not. No, that's the thing. Interesting is not the correct word.
Okay.
It is honestly like, no, I'm sorry. Did somebody else take over development and just decide they were telling a completely different story? Because this bears no relation to anything I've played unless I've missed it. And I maybe did, but I know I spoke to Chris Hyde and he was like, yeah, that's an interesting... Well, he said interesting. He said interesting. It was an interesting way to end a game, so I think so. Anyway, there we go. Let's do some listener correspondence. I'm not going to play the jingle because Chris Hyde's not here and it doesn't feel correct to do so.
It doesn't feel right.
We will try and be as brief as we can with this because we know we talked a lot about Dragon's Dogma 2, but Asim Tanvir asks, watching and reading stuff around Dragon's Dogma 2, I really, really want to play it. The emergent stuff, the world and the combat all sound great. If I haven't played the first Dragon's Dogma, is it a game I'll be able to get into? While the aforementioned stuff sounds great, it also seems that there might very well be a barrier or long learning curve for newcomers. Mick?
I don't think there's a learning curve.
I just had you the slide hand grenade, mate. Do you want to...
Yeah, you're on it.
I don't think there's a learning curve. So I think that...
Agreed.
I think that, like we said, it's a game that you've got to approach on its terms. So if you never played Dragon's Dogma, you will not be able to predict what Dragon's Dogma 2 is like. That's a really clumsy way of saying it. But like, this is very, I can't think how to word it. It's very different to any other open world you've played in the last probably 10 years. That is very different to those games. Like Adam said, it's closest maybe instructor to something like a Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. In that
you will get overloaded with side quests. Like you will go into a town and be like bang bang bang, and you're like, oh god, just pick one.
I would advise people to play it. Like I'm not necessarily telling you to go and buy it, but I'm saying if you get the opportunity to play it and you can.
Well, I see. There's no way of doing that because it's one save slot and like.
Well, yeah, you can't even borrow it from someone or play on there.
You can't even say like, hey, can I ever go on your? I see you've got Dragon's Dogma. Can I ever go? No. Well, create a profile and maybe.
Yeah, if your roommate's got it and you can create a profile on
disc-based version maybe is fine, but it's complicated because it still feels really unique.
Yeah, I think you'll have fun with it. I think if you like open world and you like fantasy RPGs, I mean, the story is kind of take it or leave it. It's a bit sort of Game of Thrones light. It's a lot of political intrigue that doesn't really. Like the story's so divorced from just going out and like banging cyclopses on the head that it kind of feels like too. So, but I would say if you can play it, if you get the opportunity or you want to try it, do so, because I think it will be you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. Let's put it that way. It's that.
Yeah, I don't think there's a middle ground, and I do think there are moments you will love it and hate it. Like it's.
But it either grabs you and you just want to see what's over the next hill or what's in the next cave or what's what I mean I just it's one of those games where every new town is like weapon vendor, armor vendor.
Same.
It's that kind of game because you don't
what new
really
sword have you got? What new thing?
Yeah, you don't pick up loot like weapons, in the world all that often. So if you've never played the first one, I'd say approach with caution, but I would absolutely say to try it.
You gave it a 9 out of 10, and I've just literally stopped playing it to do a podcast, and so I can't not recommend it. I can't. Yeah, I can
it's difficult
caveat
to say no, don't play it.
But I can heavily caveat it by saying I think you need to go into it with no expectations, or rather reset expectations of it not being a Tsushima, a Far Cry, an Assassin's Creed. It is not like any of those. It's got a very set methodology behind how you play it, and if you are one of these people excuse me, who is like, no, I want to play my way, I want the complete freedom, it has that on its terms. So it's quite difficult to sort of just go, you will or won't like it. It is very much one of those where, and I don't even think you can go, look, play an hour and you'll know if you like it. I do think it's one where you could be 10 hours in and be like, I've fallen for it now. You do have to understand. It's a game I would feel no shame in telling people, Google stuff. It won't tell you. It won't tell you. But you learning those things will make you feel, okay, not so much I like that mechanic, but now I understand that mechanic. I know how to play this game more. It is a game that doesn't give you too many tutorial tips for stuff you need to know. So I would feel no shame in just having your phone, just checking something, going, okay, now I get it. And if that sort of thing would annoy you, maybe that's where you wouldn't want to. I'm not saying you need to, because we've played it in a situation where we couldn't do that. It wasn't out, but we did have pretty much everyone on the team, besides yourself, Lyle, we could bounce ideas off, and we did preview it twice. So there were, and also obviously, of course, there are things from the original games that you just sort of know. I think you'd have fun with it. I don't think there's barriers as such or learning curve. I just think it's. I can't not recommend it. I can't.
Yeah, I would absolutely say to try it. Absolutely.
Yeah. McPoo says, this is a joke question, but he's written it, so I'll read it. When in the year will you be replaying Death Stranding's director's cut, and which element of the game are you most excited to revisit? I'm sure that's to all of us, so we can all answer, and it's not just directed at me.
It's definitely directed at you.
But I like Death Stranding. I'm not going to.
Yeah, but everyone thinks you don't like it.
No, it's not. It's just the story I don't like. It's just
Yeah.
the story I don't like, and mostly the latter half of the story. The actual gameplay. Listen, it's Postman Simulator, the game, but like Kojima style. I'm into that, but I'm not going to be replaying it. Most excited to revisit. I can't say because it's a spoiler. So.
Oh, there you go. That's a good way of doing it. There's like a sequel coming. Like, we'll play a sequel at some point, right? We'll have to talk about that.
The sequel looks more.
Yeah.
He also asks, again, Lyle, sorry, you can't answer this one, I guess, but Mick, who's your favourite party member in Rebirth to directly control? I think probably we have to exclude Cloud from that.
Which one is best to directly control?
Well, what's your favourite to directly control? Like, and I guess again in combat. And he doesn't say combat.
Red and Tifa.
I struggle with Red. Tifa for me though is the
I like the way Red moves. There's certain moves that he does where he does like a big cartwheel kick.
Yeah, they're great.
And things like that. That he's just really fun to play. But I think Tifa is just because she's like it's all it's kickboxing.
She seems really strong compared to everybody else. She really does damage.
I use Barrett a lot because of the range.
I like Barrett a lot. He's got and also gets some really good. And
that overcharge
skills.
does so much damage that it's just handy to have. But no, I Tifa and Red as often as possible.
I mean, for me, the answer is anyone but Kite Sith.
I kind of liked Kite Sith after a while. I didn't like him in the original. Like
I finished it. I played 65 hours, and I still do not understand how Kite Sith.
Best character in the game. Always.
No, he's a great character. Just the actual combat, I don't get it.
I didn't mind his combat in this. I thought they did quite well with what. I didn't get why the big Moogle would just appear out of nowhere in a puff of smoke and things like that. I mean, it's kind of weird, even in the realms of Final Fantasy. It was weird, but
fair.
But he was a party member that I didn't use unless I had to. And there's a big section of the game where you have to, and it wasn't great fun.
No.
But no, Red and Tifa.
Do you know what? Because you've said Tifa, I'll say. Oh no, Christ! It means I have to say the name wrong.
Yuffie was good as well.
I'll say
Yuffie.
Yuffie. I love being able to throw that thing in and then teleport into it. It's great fun. Great video game.
They're all quite good. They are quite good.
Apart from. Yeah, sure.
You don't like cases.
I really didn't. I can't explain it. I think I must have missed the tutorial screen or something. I just never understood how you do flipping damage with him. It's like. Anyway, that's listener correspondence this week, and that is a podcast for this week. It feels really weird to have not played a jingle. Really weird, but I'm not going to do it because he's not here.
No,
and it would be
refused.
Wrong. Yeah, can't do it. What will we talk about next week? More big games, probably some more Dragon's Dogma. I really do genuinely want to hear what Lyle thinks of it because
it'd be nice to get Heidi on for Dragon's Dogma.
I know. I can tell you now, he loves it.
But I also on a counterpoint want to get Chris White on here because I know his thoughts on it are even more in a different fun direction.
Yes, they are. Yeah, it's going to be a great December. Is all I know.
Well, they were. I don't know if he's played more or not. I haven't.
Yeah, true.
But that's the thing.
It's changed a lot from different people. Yeah.
He might have swung back around now and be like.
Because if you'd have spoken to me in the first 5 or 6 hours, I had some very different views.
And for me, there was a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore, lads.
I think you even said to me at one point, "I'm done. I'm not. I can't think I could do this."
I think you might have said it to me.
But it was the talking about it and the sort of emergent stuff that hearing other people are going. I'm like, no, I'm bloody well going to enjoy this game.
Yeah.
even if he doesn't want me to. That's a podcast this week. Thanks to Lyle and for Mick for being here, obviously. And we will speak to you next week. But before we do that, you should go to youtube.com/GodIsAGeek and subscribe to see the video version and video reviews and stuff. You should go to patreon.com, investigate there and join our Discord and chat to us all there and our lovely people and our community on there. You should subscribe on, if you've just randomly found this podcast, make sure you like it, make sure you review it, subscribe via Spotify, follow it, whatever. Do all the things that the modern world demands you to do so that we feel good about ourselves. That's
or Johnny important. YouTube will come for you.
Well, what
yeah,
do you want?
we don't want
do you want a world of Johnny YouTubes, or do you want a world of Adam, Mick, and Lyles? I mean, don't answer that. And this week I'll turn the comments section off. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however you consume this, and we will speak to you next week or whenever you choose to listen. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.